Let's take you back to Sydney. The opposition leader is speaking to Michael Fullilove, his executive director at the Lowy Institute, discussing foreign policy.
For Australia to be able to operate a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, what would their mission be?
Well, the great thing about the Australian people is that sometimes we pretend that we're not a tiny island nation of only 27 million people in the middle of nowhere. And if we think that we can go it alone over the course of a very uncertain century, then I think that is a perilous contemplation. And I believe very strongly that we have had 3 lost years and we've missed the opportunity to try and really capitalise on the AUKUS agreement, which was historic. Pillar 2 in relation to space, in relation to AI, in relation to autonomous vehicles, etc., that piece has largely sat on the shelf. And AUKUS is faltering because the money is being cannibalised through from the other 3 services, and that has created a culture of discontent within the Australian Defence Force, particularly Army, and within Australian defence industry, where people are seeing their own contracts cancelled or pushed to the right to try and fund some of the commitments that the government's made under AUKUS. So we do need a greater investment. Why do we need the capability? Again, because we're an island nation, isolated. And the beauty of the nuclear submarine is that it provides a stealth capability, and it is the best technology in the world, and it provides a replacement of a capable Collin-class diesel-electric boat that won't be fit for service in the 2040s or beyond that period. And the projection, the ability with technology to be able to deploy undersea capability from the submarine and for further reach, obviously collection and interoperability with the United States and the United Kingdom, given the attack class there, all of that is absolutely paramount to our national security interests, and that's what we embodied in the AUKUS agreement.
All right, on AUKUS, there's a lot of talk at the moment, including from your predecessor as Liberal leader, Malcolm Turnbull, that we need a plan B if AUKUS falls over. Do you think we need a plan B, or are you confident we'll be able to achieve the plan A?
I'm confident that we can achieve plan A, and it's a national project that must be successful. And the Prime Minister, as I say, on the one hand, and I support him in his statement when he says, and the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles, the Defence Minister, says this regularly as well, that we live in the most precarious period since the end of the Second World War. Now, if that statement is to mean something, or if it's to be explained, it can't be explained by taking money out of defence or deferring investment and delaying capability acquisition and providing a deterrence that our country must project. It's anomalous, and it hasn't yet been explained by the Prime Minister. What does he mean by that statement? It's based on intelligence. It's consistent with what the Brits are saying, with what the Canadians are saying, with what the Europeans are saying. Listen to Jens Stoltenberg's words in relation to this issue. There is a deep and consistent theme of concern about what happens in this century. And the Prime Minister says that, reflects that in his statement, but it's not reflected in the investment decisions or in the budget papers or indeed in the direction that the government's given to defence.
All right, let me ask you about defence spending, because you clearly signalled an intention to increase defence spending, but I don't think I heard a number unless I switched off at that moment. And we do like to make news at the Institute, Peter. Can I tempt you to suggest a number? There was a report in the AFR this week that indicated the coalition is closing on a target of 2.5% by 2029.
Well, you can tempt me, but I won't take the temptation. We'll make an announcement in relation to defence at the appropriate time, but I think we've signalled very clearly that you can't say that we live in the most precarious period since the Second World War. You can't sign up to AUKUS with the very significant financial undertaking that is that program and not put additional money into the Australian Defence Force. So we'll have more to say in that regard, but there is a clear demand for it, and we're committed to increasing defence spending, and we've been very clear about that.
And what would be your priorities for that extra spend? Would it be on recruitment? Would it be on drones? Would it be strengthening missile defences in the north?
Well, it's all of that. So it's on human capability, and it's on defence materiel, and it's also about how we're leveraging the opportunities here in Australia. I think, again, you can look to the international example, but what's happened in Japan in terms of their ability to provide sustainment and servicing to the United States Navy, there is enormous opportunity for us domestically, whether it's in Osborne or Henderson or on the East Coast somewhere else, for us to provide that support to a fleet, whether it's the US, the UK, Japan, other countries who will have a greater presence in our region, that would create jobs and create economic activity and would leverage strength. I always, when we were discussing AUKUS, in my mind, I always wanted to make sure that we were a net contributor to the overall output, the overall industrial capacity output, so to contribute to increasing the drumbeat of the Virginia class or the attack class out of Barrow. And that was, I think, lost on this government, and I think there is some recalibration of that. We need to spend money efficiently, and there's a lot of inefficiency in the acquisition process at the moment. It's far too bureaucratic. It's far too costly. The timelines are pushed out deliberately to the right to try and move money beyond the forward estimates, and we need to address some of those institutional problems within defence as well to drive that productivity and to drive an efficiency. And there are some fantastic examples where defence has done well in different programs, GHOSTBAT and others, where we've worked with industry, and we're talking to defence industry at the moment who are closing their doors. And that is not something that should be a feature. We should be providing further support and sustainment to them. And as I say, in turn, the opportunities will come with our allies to provide support to those, defence forces as well.
All right, let me ask you a couple of questions about China. What message was Xi Jinping sending when he deployed that naval task group to go right around the continent and conduct those live fire exercises without notice?
I listened to your words earlier, and I concur with your judgment that it was a show of force. Now, they're not words that the Prime Minister used at all. It was the weakest, most limp-wrist response you could see from a leader, and frankly, none of his leaders, Liberal or Labor, would have provided the response that the Prime Minister did. So it was an obvious sign of force. It was contempt because the Papua New Guinean government had been provided with pre-warning where the Australian government hadn't about the movements, and it shows also a critical failure in our response capacities, or whether the government directed that there was no response. There were surface assets that were deployed, but again, there was no urgency to that task. And I think what was being tested was our response time, how we would engage, what we would say, and I think the Prime Minister, frankly, has failed every one of those tests.